In this video, I'm going to show you a simple hack that's easy to do and it completely changed the way I study. And it's the same hack that helped me rank third in my medical licensure exam and first in my internal medicine board exam. And I did this while actually still enjoying my life. And what's interesting is I'd been using this hack for quite a long time now without even realizing it until I read the book Dopamine Nation by Dr Anna Lembke. So in this video, we're going to talk about what dopamine is, how dopamine fasting works, and then I'm also going to share some actionable tips that you can literally start doing today so you can actually enjoy and get addicted to studying, pass your exams, get better grades in less time while still actually enjoying your life. Let's get into it. Now, have you ever noticed how hard it is to just sit down and study and how easy it is to just grab your phone, check Facebook or Instagram or scroll mindlessly on TikTok? Now, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just that our brains have become so used to engaging in high stimuli or what we call as high dopamine activities. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter, basically a chemical in the brain that's responsible for motivating us to seek out pleasure. And whenever we do or experience something pleasurable, like scrolling through social media or eating junk food or watching Netflix or playing video games, dopamine gets released in our brain's reward pathways. And that's what makes us feel that pleasure sensation and makes us feel good. Now, Dr. Anna Lembke, the author of Dopamine Nation, she mentions in the book that the brain area that processes pleasure also processes pain, and that it works much like a balance or like a seesaw that tilts in either direction of pleasure or pain. So when you press down on one side, the other side lifts up. So every time we engage in something that feels really good, like we're basically pressing down on the pleasure side of the seesaw, and the more we press it down and the faster we press it down, the more pleasure we feel. And as a result, the pain side lifts up. But the thing is, your brain doesn't like the seesaw to be out of balance. And so it activates powerful self-regulating mechanisms designed to bring that seesaw back to level, which is a process called homeostasis. So when you keep pressing on the pleasure side by doing these high dopamine, highly pleasurable activities, your brain tries to compensate by adding weight to the pain side. And the author actually imagines those weights as like little gremlins hopping on the pain side to keep things balanced. And so what happens is, with each repeated experience of pleasure, the next experience will be less pleasurable than the one before, because now it has to push against more gremlins on the pain side. And it says in the book, we've all experienced craving in the aftermath of pleasure, whether it's reaching for a second potato chip or clicking the link for another round of video games. It's natural to want to recreate those good feelings or try not to let them fade away. The simple solution is to keep eating or playing or watching or reading. But there's a problem with that. With repeated exposure to the same or similar pleasure stimulus, the initial deviation to the side of pleasure gets weaker and shorter, and the after response to the side of pain gets stronger and longer, a process scientists call neuroadaptation. And that is, with repetition, our gremlins get bigger, faster, and more numerous, and we need more of our drug of choice to get the same effect. Needing more of a substance to feel pleasure or experiencing less pleasure at a given dose is called tolerance, and tolerance is an important factor in the development of addiction. And this is exactly why the 5th slice of pizza doesn't taste as good, or the 10th episode of a series that you're binge watching suddenly felt boring, or that 3rd tub of ice cream just isn't satisfying anymore, because you've basically developed a tolerance for pleasure. And that's only the first problem, because the second one is much worse, because those gremlins, the weight on the pain side, they don't just disappear when you stop doing the pleasurable activities, because they stay there. So when you're not doing anything like those pleasurable and stimulating activities, your default state now becomes one of pain or discomfort. And there's a line in the book that says, science teaches us that every pleasure exacts a price, and the pain that follows is longer lasting and more intense than the pleasure that gave rise to it. With prolonged and repeated exposure to pleasurable stimuli, our capacity to tolerate pain decreases, and our threshold for experiencing pleasure increases. And that's why nowadays, even the slightest bit of boredom or discomfort, like sitting down and trying to read a book or studying or doing something uncomfortable like doing practice tests, they feel unbearable. And the moment studying starts to feel even a little boring or uncomfortable, we immediately just grab our phones, not for enjoyment, but just to feel normal again. But the problem is, each time we do that, it just adds more weight to the pain side. And over time, we get trapped into this cycle of overindulgence in pleasurable activities. And our brains just get so used to having these constant pleasure that anything less stimulating than our phones and social media like studying or reading or going to the gym, which are low dopamine but meaningful activities, they start to feel painful. And so the next question is, how do we fix this? Like, how do we take the gremlins off the pain side of the seesaw so we can restore that pain-pleasure balance and get back to actually enjoying things like studying again? And that brings us to the second part of the video, which is dopamine fasting. Now, dopamine fasting is basically abstaining from pleasure and overconsumption of high dopamine activities so that you can recalibrate or reset your brain's pain-pleasure balance. And it says in the book, dopamine fasting involves eliminating our substance or behavior of choice for a period of time long enough to reset reward pathways and return to healthy levels of dopamine firing. By stopping the cycle of intoxication and withdrawal, we stand a good chance of improving our mood and overall sense of well-being, taking pleasure in other, more modest rewards, and understanding the true impact of consumption on our lives. How long should we abstain from our drug of choice? And just to clarify, this drug can be anything from compulsive use of social media, eating junk food, binge watching shows. Now, for individuals who are safely able to stop their substance or behavior, I recommend 4 weeks of abstinence. Why 4 weeks? Now, most people can wrap their heads around 4 weeks. It's not too intimidating an amount of time. Also, clinical experience dictates that it takes on average about 4 weeks for those neuroadaptation gremlins to hop off the pain side of the balance and for homeostasis to be restored. Less time than 4 weeks will result in all the pain of withdrawal without the benefits of recovery. And according to the book, there are two main ways to reset this balance. Now, the first one is abstaining from pleasure, and the second one is applying therapeutic pain. Now, let's start with the first one, which is abstaining from pleasure. Now, this simply means avoiding the highly stimulating activities that we've gotten so used to. And that's why it's called fasting. It's just like fasting from food. You're giving your brain a break from the constant flood of dopamine. And when you do that, the weight on the pain side of the seesaw, the gremlins that we talked about earlier, they slowly start to come off. And over time, the seesaw begins to balance again. And that's when you start to feel good again from doing the seemingly boring but meaningful stuff that we actually want to do, like studying, reading, or going to the gym. Now, the second method is applying therapeutic pain, which just basically means like intentionally pressing down on the pain side of the seesaw. And the book says, going back to our gremlins and our pleasure-pain balance, we learned that repeatedly pressing on the pleasure side of the balance leads to gremlins camped out on the pain side. Well, it turns out that pressing on the pain side of the balance causes the gremlins to hop on the pleasure side. Now, what we're doing when we expose our bodies to pain is setting in motion our own self-healing mechanisms. Examples include physical pain in the form of exercise, ice-cold water plunges, and intermittent fasting, as well as mental pain in the form of any mental activity that requires sustained concentration and/or tolerating discomfort, such as meditation, prayer, cognitive challenges, emotional challenges, creative endeavors, and so on. And this is why when you practice doing hard things, or like sitting for long hours of studying, like doing practice tests, or working out in the gym, or fasting, or even starting a side hustle, you're actually resetting the pain-pleasure balance, and you'll start enjoying doing those low stimuli, low dopamine, but meaningful things again. And that brings us to the next question, like, how do you actually do this in real life? Like, what are some simple steps that you can start doing today to apply dopamine fasting to your study routine so that studying feels easier and more enjoyable? Now, this leads us to the last part of the video, which is how to apply dopamine fasting so you get addicted to studying. Now, the first one is get rid of your phone. Like, your phone is the biggest, easiest, and most convenient source of high dopamine. And I actually still struggle a lot with this. And about 5 minutes into studying, my mind would start to wander and I'd feel bored and uncomfortable just sitting there trying to read something. And before I even realized, I would instinctively reach for my phone. And just like that, 20 minutes are gone. And that's when I started using physical restraints, like one of the strategies mentioned in the book. And it's basically about putting physical distance between you and the thing that you're dopamine fasting from. So when I'm studying, I would turn off the phone notifications, put my phone out of sight, and like place it somewhere where I would have to stand up to reach for it. Because even that tiny bit of friction, like having to get up and like walk a few steps if you really want to use your phone, is often enough to stop you from grabbing it automatically. Because if your phone is right beside you, even if it's facing down, your brain is still using that energy to try to ignore it. And so half of your attention is spent resisting picking up the phone, and instead of focusing all of your attention on the task that is in front of you. And the other stuff that helped me was I quit social media. Like, I only check Messenger when I really need to, and even then I log in using my desktop browser instead of the app. And so again, that bit of friction of having to log back in and typing in my username and password is often enough to stop me from opening the app even when I don't need to. And I also don't use Instagram or TikTok at all, and I set a 1-hour app limit for Messenger and Telegram. And also, one of the best things I've done recently is to put my phone on grayscale mode because it makes everything look dull, and this seemingly small change actually makes a huge difference because now my phone is less stimulating and way less addictive. Now, the next way to apply dopamine fasting is through therapeutic pain, and one of the best ways to do this is meditation. And I use the Headspace app for like 10-minute guided meditations, and what meditation does is it forces you to sit still and simply watch your thoughts, like clouds passing by in the sky, without reacting to them. And honestly, that's painful at first. Like, most people can't sit alone with their thoughts for even a minute. But that's exactly the point. Like, by training your mind to sit with stillness, boredom, and silence, you're teaching it to get comfortable with quiet and doing low dopamine activities. And so you're rewiring your brain to handle boredom and discomfort. And that's what resets your pain-pleasure balance. And the final tip is to intentionally do hard things that help press on the pain side of the pain-pleasure balance and help restore its balance, like going to the gym, fasting, eating clean, and taking cold showers. And I know none of these are comfortable, like waking up early, lifting weights, or skipping junk food, but they build this tolerance for pain and discomfort. And as David Goggins said in his interview with Chris Williamson, life will always throw involuntary or unchosen suffering at you, like things you can't control, like failing an exam or getting rejected. But the only way to prepare for that is through choosing to do voluntary chosen suffering, like doing the hard things that you choose to do, so that when the real life unchosen suffering comes, you're ready for it. And now that you know how to do dopamine fasting so you can start enjoying studying and even get addicted to it, the next question is, how do you actually study faster and more effectively without taking down notes? And so if you're interested in that, you might want to check out this video right here where I talk all about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in that video. Bye.